parents, have you ever wanted to teach Montessori math at home, not have the resources, maybe not for lack of money or for lack of not knowing what to do? I'm going to show you how to make your own Montessori math materials at home using things that you might have around your house. So let's get started. Okay, so to use Montessori materials or Montessori math, what we would need are 1,000 cubes, 100 squares, 10 strips, and units. And so what I did to make these is I just took regular graph paper, and just to make things nice and simple, I took some sticky notes and I sectioned them off. I actually cut them a little bit smaller than what they are, but still so that they're the same size, so that they're all the same size. And then I made a shape similar to this. The only thing is it would be better if this was a little bit down here, and so so that you could make the cubes. And then actually just with the leftover scraps, I was able to make some 100 squares. And now this isn't exactly 100 on here, and so it might be a little bit, if you just call it 100, they will, the students will know. And then what I did was I made a unit, just a little square out of the graph paper, and then I made 10 sections. So this one's a little bit easier for them to count how many is in here, how many units, 10. And so they can see that this is a unit, 10, and then we have our hundreds and our thousands. And we just do a presentation introducing what those things are. So after you've practiced with the more concrete making numbers with the thousands, hundreds, tens, and units, you can start to introduce the numerical, the symbol that goes along with the concrete quantities. So in order to do that, what I've done was I made cards. So I made all the ones, and I made them the exact, I kind of measured so that it would cover up the ones place, but not the tens place. And then same thing with the tens and the hundreds and the thousands. And the number cards that I made, 1,000 all the way up to 9,000. And with these numbers, I made them in the corresponding numbers that we use, or colors that we use for Montessori materials. So we have green for the units, for the tens we use blue, hundreds red, and for the thousands we also use green. And so that's how I'm going to use cards so the children can use it at home. So now that your child has practiced a bit with the concrete materials, they know how to make a number, but they don't necessarily know the symbol of the number using number cards. You can then introduce the actual symbol that's related to that number. So what I've done was I've made some of these small number cards, and I've made the single one-digit place that would not cover up the tens place, and then all the tens, all the hundreds up to 900, and all the thousands up to 9,000. And so to make these, I've also corresponded the correct color that is the same in the Montessori color cards of the small and large numbers. So we have green for the thousands, red for the hundreds, blue for the tens, and green for the ones. So once your child has made concrete numbers and then related it, corresponded it with the symbol, they can start using their own cards and make their own numbers independently. So you can just give them these, I made a few different number cards. So with large numbers, and then again, I just use the corresponding colors, green for the thousands, red for the hundreds, blue for the tens, and green for the units. And it just helps them understand the idea of a column. So after they've made single numbers, then they can go into addition of those numbers, again still using the concrete with the symbol number related beside it. And then they can start writing down the actual number and explaining columns. So I color the columns so that they can see where where they would put the actual number. And then I tell them that it's a math sentence, and we read it like a math sentence. So 1,423 plus 2,315 equals, and it's a math sentence. And that's kind of how I explain that. Okay, so now that your child can make sense of the concrete, what is 1,000, what is 100, what is a 10, and what is a unit, and they completely understand that, and they've now practiced making large numbers, and then they've made the symbol association, so what that actual number representation is, you can get them to start adding numbers. So you might ask them, can you bring me 1,000s, 400s, 2 10s, and 3 units? And practice verbally making this number. I asked you to bring me 1,000. Do you have, how many do you have? And if they say 1, great. And if they don't, maybe they brought 4. Oh, what you know, does that look right? What do you need to do? And again, we don't, we want to associate positive reinforcement, so we don't want to correct them in that moment. We want them to have that, allow for self-correction. So, something looks a little interesting with this. So let's count it together. And so trying to get them to make their own understanding if they're correct or not would be awesome to do. And then, so once they've brought the number and then they'll be ready for the more written form. So we'll talk about that. So now that your child is ready for the written form of numbers, you can first start modeling how to write the number by using highlighter, and they can go over top of it. And so you would write the 1,423 and make that number first, and they would go over it with pencil. And after you've done making that number, then you would put the plus sign with highlighter and 2,315, or 110 and 5 unit you would explain to the child. And then they would go over top of that number equals. And so then you would make that number with the concrete materials. It's also during this time where I like to emphasize and explain the idea of a column. So all the thousands stay in the same column, hundreds, tens, and ones. And I also like to color coordinate them as well. So green for the thousands, red for the hundreds, blue for the tens, and green again for the units. And just explain that we put them all in the corresponding columns. Okay, so you would practice verbally first with just asking them about bringing you concrete numbers and then associate the symbols afterwards. But basically you would ask them, can you bring me 1,000, 400s, 2 10s, and 3 units? And so without showing them the number, you would ask them to bring you that. If they don't, say if they brought you only 300s, you go through all of them. I've asked you to bring 1,000. How many do you have? Super. I asked you to bring 400. How many do you have? 3. Oh, what do you need? I asked you to bring 4. So what do you need to do? Usually they'll know, and if not, let's count them again. And how many did I ask you to bring? 4. Okay, well, what do we need to do? And so once they got the correct number, then you can associate the symbol with it. So how many thousands? And you use the small number cards. Again, I just made my own out of paper. So 1,000, 400, 2 10s, and 3 units. And at this time, you've written it in the book. They've written it in the book, and then you can ask them to bring you the second number. Can you bring me 2,000s, 300s, 110, and 5 units? And so, again, the same thing. How many thousands did I ask you to bring? Okay, I asked you to bring 300s. How many do you have? I asked you to bring 110. How many do you have? I asked you to bring me 5 10s. How many do you have? Okay, 5 units. And how many do you have? And again, you can do the same corresponding the symbol with it. If they're ready for the symbol, then you can match up the symbol. It's always great to show them what it's like when it's connected, when the number is all together. So you say, is the thousand still there? Are the zeros still there? Yep. And there's the 400. Oh, is it still 1,000? Yep. And the 400 just goes like that. And is the 400 still there? Yes. and then just so that they know that they are still, that the 1,000 is still there and the hundreds over top of it, and so you just so that they know, you put them together, and just so that they're all lined up. Another way that you can mention it and say it is just that it's a way to save space. And so once you've combined and put the numbers, so it looks like 2,300, 1, 10, and 5 units. We do these with the large number cards, and then we put the total answer with the large number cards. Okay, so once you've added, put those together and you're ready to add them, red means adding. So we can put a red string along the bottom. So I'm just going to do that. Okay, so I put a red line underneath that, and what we're going to do is we're going to bring the numbers together. And so this is the part where a lot of students really like it, especially if you use a fun sound. And so to bring them together, you would go zoop, and then you can put them underneath the red line. Okay, so I'm going to zoop. I'm going to zoop all the 10s, zoop, and put them underneath the line. And same thing with the hundreds and the thousands. So I will take the zoop and I'll put them all at the bottom, zoop, and collect them, and all the thousands. Zoop. And so then we collected them and combined them underneath the line, leaving the small number cards. And normally we would have a large number cards at the side, but I did not make any large number cards at home here. Okay, so what we do is once we have them all zooped underneath the line, then we can start adding them up. And we always, we mentioned to the students that we always start with the units first. So once we add the units, we add them all together. So 3 units plus 5 units together make 8 units. And then you would, depending on where your child is at, you may write it with a highlighter first, or they can write it under the column, or just guide them to write it there. And then the same thing with the 10s, the same thing with the hundreds and the thousands. And so just for this video purpose, once you get them to write it down, I explain it again like a math. This is a math sentence, and we read it just like we do words, from left to right and from top to bottom. So I would get them to read 1,423, or 2 10s and 3 units, depending where your child's at, plus, and I explain what that symbol is if they haven't explained that yet, plus 2 thousands, 3 hundreds, 1 10, and 5 units equals, or together make, 3,700 and 3 10s and 8 units. So there's how you have, and so I noticed, if you notice at the top it says small bead frame, we do the same thing for the small bead frame as well as the stamp game, just itemizing the columns when you're adding numbers in the thousands. So there you have it. That's one way that you can use what you have at home, practice over the summer, some adding in the thousands when your child's ready to add those big numbers. So hope you took some value of that, and have fun adding. I was here at the Teacher's Trunk here in Saskatoon, and I noticed they had some really neat base 10 starter kits that you could buy. And I thought, what a great idea to purchase locally and have useful resources on.